Hello, thanks for stopping by. In this video, I'm creating an ink blended background that I will then paper piece into a die cut background to create our card. So I'm going to start with two 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 white cardstock panels, and I'm going to ink blend a gradient on one of the panels. And I'm using my favorite color palette, just sort of a teal turquoise, and I'm just roughly ink blending and darkening this panel to make a sort of ink blended background gradient. And now I have my two panels, and I'm going to use this corner die cut. In the past, I've used like a full size panel die cut, but in this case, I just want to use the corner. So I'm going to end up cutting this out of both corners of my white cardstock panel. And to start off, I'm just gonna cut it out of one corner of my card panel that has been ink blended. And the reason I'm doing this is because I don't wanna lose all of those tiny little pieces. And if I cut them out of both corners at once, it'll be really hard to try and remember exactly where all the pieces go. So I have a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base that I'm then going to adhere the white die cut panel to. And so to do this, I'm going to use a double-sided adhesive sheet. So I'm going to peel off one of the sides, and I'm going to adhere that directly to the top part, or the front-facing side of the card base. And I'm trying to line it up perfectly because I want as much of this double-sided adhesive to cover that front piece of the cardstock. And I'm just gonna press it down a little bit to make sure it sticks really well. And then there's some little excess hanging off the edge, so I'm just gonna trim it off here. And then what I'm gonna do is remove the second side of the adhesive sheet that's sort of protecting it. And it can be a little tricky to get these corners. And then I'm going to put my die cut panel directly onto the adhesive of the card base. So I'm trying to line that up as perfectly as possible. I'm just gonna give it a good press so that the die cut is secure. So now I'm going to move on to the paper piecing format, or portion of this video. So in order to do this, I have a lot of the die cuts still stuck to the die. So what I'm using is I'm just laying the die, like hovering it over the card base and using my pokey tool to sort of push the die cuts directly into the openings of the die cut and then into the sort of holes that are formed by the die cut card panel. So I'm just using this tool to sort of push them through, and I will need to adjust them, like it's not always perfect, so I'll use my tool to sort of push them back into place. And once I finish with what's stuck to the die cut, then I move on to what's stuck to the card panel that I cut out. And so now I'm doing the same thing and pushing all of those into those pieces. And there were a few die cut pieces that fell out of both the die cut panel and the die itself. And so now I'm just using the colors as a guide to sort of determine exactly where each of these pieces needs to go within the die cut window. It's basically like doing a puzzle. And I was sort of missing that one piece and it ended up being stuck to that tape. So now I'm gonna go ahead and cut the second corner out of this colored card panel, and that was the reason why I did them separately, was so that I could use the die cut itself to sort of push the pieces through and into the final card. So I'm doing the same thing here, just using the die cut directly over the card panel and lining it up so that I can push them through directly onto the card base, and then just using my tool to sort of push them into place if I don't do a very good job at first. And this does take kind of a bit of time because it's a lot of tiny pieces and trying to make sure they're in the hole. So I sped it up and cut some of it out just to make this flow a little bit better. I'm then moving on to the same thing, any pieces that were stuck to the remaining die panel, put those in, and now I'm just piecing the final pieces that had fallen out of both into the final card base. I'm then using the other side of the adhesive just to apply pressure and make sure those are all sticking pretty well. And so since this was a pretty dramatic and detailed background, I wanted a really simple sentiment. So I'm gonna cut this hello out of some glitter cardstock, and that is going to form the sentiment for the card. I decided to give it some dimension by cutting some additional pieces out of white cardstock. I think I have 3 layers here, and so I adhered those together, and now I'm going to adhere the glitter hello to the top of those to give it some dimension on the card. And here is the final card. A really simple design, but it does use a kind of complicated technique, and I just love how that gradient looks as a paper piece background. And with a really simple sentiment, I think rounds out the full card. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and found some inspiration and a new technique to be more efficient with paper piecing little bits from die cuts. Thanks for watching.